Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube video talking about my custom figures that I made for the first half of 2021. These were all the figures I made from January to June, and yeah, I got quite a few done, so I'll get into it and explain how I did some of these. So first up, I've got my Red Leader figure. I wanted to try to update my Ross Thunderbolts team. Kind of a theme for the year for me was just trying to get some of these teams updated and even completed in some cases. So yeah, here we've got the leader. Came along pretty good, and basically what I did here was I wound up taking the parts from the leader and sort of kind of kit bashing a little chameleon together, which worked out for both figures pretty well. And then you can see the leader in with the Thunderbolts team. That all came together pretty well and looks pretty good. Next up was my Prestige or Rachel Summers figure. I was really hoping that Hasbro would have given us something by now that sort of resembled this, but I gave up and just decided to try to make it myself, and pretty happy with how she came out, and she fits in well with sort of my newer or more modern X-Men team. After Prestige, I started with this image on Blood Axe. I really liked this image, and I just knew that like I had to make a figure for this. It just looked awesome to me. So I grabbed an extra, I believe this was one of the Reavers figures, and just started kind of painting it all up black, knowing that black was going to be my base. I added in some actual like jewelry pieces, like the silver chain that you see in those silver skulls. Luckily my wife does jewelry, and she makes jewelry, so she always has like extra stuff that I can look at or borrow. Sculpted a couple extra spikes on the shoulder pad there, and then just used a really nice Tester's enamel metallic red for the bracers, and I almost want to go back and do that same metallic red on the skull too, because the skull looks good but could be better. And of course painted the lower jaw black, just like the image, so that he has just the upper teeth there. It looks pretty good with my Asgard display and in with Thunderstrike. Next up, I had this awesome image of the Squadron Supreme of America, and I was getting kind of excited and looking forward to these guys being more in the comics. And I had heard a rumor that in the spring they were going to kind of get their own story arc, which because of COVID I think got delayed a little bit further. But I think we just got that story here with these characters more in it. So I'm pretty excited to get this team together. I started with a redo of NightHawk, and that really brought that figure to life. I thought the original figure was really bland and boring looking, but giving him his squadron colors, he looks awesome. And then of course doing the blur or Whizzer, pretty fun to add those electric effects onto him and give him some nice colorful paint. So for Power Princess, I wound up thinking that the easiest thing to do here would just be to take a Wonder Woman and as you can see, just basically paint it black and leave the gold. My wife made me a resin shield, which I attached a bird onto it. Thought that kind of went well with that character, brought everything in together. And then of course that's the X-23 head sculpt, the plain Laura head sculpt, which I never did the sort of like the tiara look or thing on top. After Power Princess, I needed just to finish off with Dr. Spectrum. Kind of a cool figure. I sculpted a little piece in his chest, which is his like power stone. And then of course he's got the nice colors, which you got to be careful here, because if you blend them, you're going to make a different color altogether. But I think it came out pretty good. I believe I used an eel figure for the base, which made it pretty easy. It's an overall team shot of everybody. Looks really good with everyone together. And I think Thundra was in there at one point too, so I've got her picture with a team, but she never shows up in the new comic series. Next up, I started this one was like a rabbit hole that I just fell down. I started with just an upgrade to Dani Moonstar, and I really liked the way that everything came out on her, and I was like, you know what, I just need to go ahead and kind of like make the New Mutants team with her, and kind of give everybody like a similar look. So after Dani, I went into a new Magik look. That's kind of like a blend of maybe some of the classic looks she had, but maybe a little bit more of the modern too. But yeah, it was kind of cool to have like a different look for Magik other than the other modern one that we have. And then I went into Doug, who is actually a Luke Skywalker base, which I did that because I wanted him to be smaller. He's like a young kid, so I didn't want him to be on an adult body, but this actually being a little bit smaller in scale works out pretty well. And I always thought that the Luke head looked a lot like Doug, so I'm very happy with how that came out. And then of course just a quick easy bash for Magma. A lot of people are doing this with the movie Carol Danvers head, and just add some fire effects onto that base body is pretty easy. And after that I did I did Karma, where I sculpted her robotic leg. I think I just painted a yellow X onto, this was like a cheap body that I picked up loose. I think this was like the 2-pack with Luke Cage and whoever Rosario Dawson's character is from the Luke Cage series. I think it looks pretty good. And then after basically giving Sunspot and Cannonball simple little bashes, I went really crazy and decided I wanted to add Rockslide into this team. I've always wanted to do a Rockslide figure, and I really thought Hasbro would have given us one by now. So I had a couple extra Strong Guy Build-A-Figure pieces, and between that and modding in some of the Thing body pieces and obviously doing some sculpt, I came together with this thing that I didn't even think was going to work, and actually it works really well, especially for like his upper body size and everything. I'm really happy with the way he turned out. Just an awesome figure that just gives some more mass to that team. When you look at Warlock in the back with him in the back to it, it's pretty cool. Overall, very happy with how that all turned out. Next up, I really wanted to make a Blue Marvel figure for Black History Month, and I cannot believe Hasbro has not made this guy yet. He's got a couple different looks. This is my favorite look. As soon as I saw the Punisher body, I knew I could make it work, and I just had to sculpt that very squared off collar that he has. I saw a few other people use this head sculpt, and I think it does work well, as long as you remember to paint his white hair in there, because Adam Brasher has that very very unique look to him. I love this paint color that I found. It was like a nice teal blue color from Testers, and I think it's perfect for that look. And yeah, very happy with how he came out, and looks awesome in my Avengers display. After that, I went into a Swordsman custom. Swordsman is another member that I wanted to add to my Thunderbolts display. It's a ridiculously large display that I have for Thunderbolts. I'm almost like completed with it. I've basically got just about everybody that could be in there. I'm hoping Hasbro will give us maybe an Atlas and a couple other guys soon, but I've made customs of a lot of the other figures that have been missing. And this guy was just like a must-do for me. But yeah, I love the Swordsman, the way he looks in that comic series. It's not the same Swordsman from the original Avengers. It's actually a different person. And I forget he's like related to Barons or those guys. And he's got like magical swords. I think one of the swords is like empowered by his sister or something. But since he always has swords, I decided I'd give him like a whole bunch. I think in total my Swordsman custom has like 4 swords on him, and all different and kind of cool looking. And so I ended up going back on Swordsman and sculpting in some more parts to try to make him more accurate to that image that I saw. So he's got like the armbands and the shoulder pads are sculpted on there. But that's basically I think it's like the Paladin body that I used there, and I picked up an extra head from the movie figure Taskmaster from the Black Widow movie, and did a little sculpting on that to try to make it look a little bit more like the Swordsman helmet. Here he is in with Thunderbolts display team. I think that came out pretty good. Next up, I really wanted a classic Beta Ray Bill look for my Asgard display, and I just really need to update my Toy Biz Bill, which was a great figure, and I love that figure, especially the soft cape. And I really wanted to keep the soft cape, so I was like, I think I can make this work if I sculpt it in right. It may actually come out to be a pretty good figure. So with the new Thunderstrike figure, the legs are pinless. So that was a bit tricky because I still was able to retain and use the old pins in the knee joints for this, along with the original Toy Biz lower legs. And then, of course, blending them into the upper legs. A little bit of paint with the new modern Beta Ray Bill arms and the head from the new Beta Ray Bill. And I also cut off and took the wings off the old Toy Biz helmet and put them on the modern look. And I'm really happy with the way this came out. I really like the colors. I think he really pops and stands out like big time on my Asgard display. And here you can see him pictured with basically the two figures that made him all come together. It was the modern Bill and the Thunderstrike figure. And then here he is pictured with the rest of the Asgard display, and you can see my custom blood axe over there. It's pretty cool. That display is really coming together nicely, and I hope we get more of the comic characters for that. And I also added another comic character custom that you'll see here in a minute. Next up, I was looking at some images of Blade, and especially like how he looks sort of in some of the more modern comics, and it reminded me that Hasbro almost gave us this figure that I think everybody wanted, especially. I love the open mouth where he has the fangs exposed and everything, and of course the jacket. Just this overall look was really cool, and I was like, why didn't they give us this or redo it at some point? They gave us this new Blade that is kind of awkward, and a lot of people have had to mod it already to make it move better because it's very awkward. So I really wasn't happy with the new Winter Soldier figure that came out, so I figured I would start with that as my base, and I liked sort of the look to it. And I believe I grabbed a Star-Lord jacket with, oh my god, I don't even know whose arms. I think these are Ronan's, movie Ronan's arms, which have kind of this cool like padded look to them, which I thought would go good with that jacket. And then I just kind of decided that this Blade needed to be kind of like the all-out assassin and need to have like a little bit of everything. So he's got like wooden stakes, which is basically just cut toothpicks. And then I've got some of the silver stakes that he's always carrying as well. Grenades, guns, swords, just a little bit of everything. I just feel like he needed it. But yeah, this figure just looks so cool in my opinion, and I was really happy to have this. And when you put the two side by side, the Blade that Hasbro gave us and then this Blade, I just think this is the one we all wanted, and it's a pretty cool figure. Next up, I wanted to make a Savage Avengers display, and I don't know, some of the comic covers for that are pretty cool and show a lot of these characters together, even though in the series the characters are not quite all together like this, but on the comic covers they are. So for this, I put my custom Venom from last year in the back there. And basically the character I had to make or come up with was Conan, as you can see him there in the middle. He is kind of like a blend of a few things. I think that's the Namor body. That is the shaman head with a painted gold bandana on the top there. And then you've got his like bone necklace that came from the Puma figure. I don't know where that large sword came from, but it just fit with Conan correctly. And then that is the Black Knight belt, and then his boots, the lower legs, I actually put the boots on from a Nuke figure, which I think works out pretty well, and you can see this pretty close to a Conan. I mean, he might be should be a little bit bigger, but with the rest of the characters around him here, I think the scale is pretty good. So next up was the other comic Asgardian figure that I was talking about that I really wanted to have in my display. I wanted a comic Executioner, but I just couldn't find a head sculpt that was going to work, so I wound up using the movie head sculpt. Even though it's a bit on the small side for scale, I think it kind of adds a little bit of humor to the proportions that this comic character kind of always had. He was kind of always like this giant dude. So I really wanted the arms to stand out, and I thought it'd be kind of funny to keep the legs like a little bit on the smaller side, just to kind of give him those like crazy comic proportions. So this, I believe, is the extra leftover. Could be the Thunderstrike arms, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, I just painted like the gloves and everything else to match. The upper body, I believe in the mid torso as well, is from the modern Beta Ray Bill. I had some leftover parts from that, obviously. And then the lower legs is from the movie Ronin figure that I had recycled and leftover parts, with a couple movie accessories that you can see them on there. An Executioner in with my Asgard display. It looks good next to Enchantress and some of the other villains there. Next up was my Domino upgrade or remake. I wanted the Domino that looked more like this comic cover that whenever I think of Domino, that's what pops in my head. And we just haven't got that figure yet, so I needed to make it. And I started to think, okay, my X-Force display could use some better looking figures in there. So I gave Domino her old Toy Biz, or actually I think that was a Hasbro figure that they put like these cool gun pouches on the hips or on the sides of her legs. So I kept those, and then just kind of modded out some of the belts to kind of give her that look. Like she's got these extra belts and pouches on her. And everything was just painted in that same purple color. And I had to do some sculpting on her head, of course. And I think that's like a Polaris head that's all painted and modified to look like Domino. It came out pretty good. You can see her in with my X-Force other figures there. It looks pretty cool. Next up was a figure that I saw a lot of people doing, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how Hasbro hasn't done this one. This is an easy one. Sersi, we've got basically all these parts. So yeah, it's just like an Enchantress torso. Actually, the whole body I believe was Enchantress, and I think I took the jacket from the movie figure Carol from Captain Marvel. Ported over the Enchantress gloves, everything painted red, and then actually used some leftover shoulder pads for the upper boots on the Sersi figure, and then of course the head is just Silver Sable painted. And that is Sersi in with my Avengers display. And then next up, I wanted to do something random. I really can't believe we didn't get this figure. As soon as I saw that Thunderstrike figure, I said, okay, those are the parts right there. We're going to get a random figure like right away because it's easy reuse for Hasbro. But they didn't do it, so I figured I'll probably get it done before they even think of this. But here you have a pretty easy recipe to make a pretty awesome random figure. I think my favorite part was just seeing that head sculpt, because I knew that if I painted the lower face light in color, I could almost give that 5 o'clock shadow that the character has. And then the glasses, of course, Jubilee glasses, just painted black. But yeah, this figure, the only thing that worried me was sculpting that gun cannon, like random guns that he's able to generate, and I think it came out pretty good, almost alien looking, which is what I was going for, and even able to port some of the blast effects into it. And yeah, again, I'm just really happy. I tried to do this thing on his pants where like sort of a dark blue blended with some light blues to try to give it more of like a jeans look. And then, of course, here he is pictured with the rest of X Factor. And stoked to have this team looking like that. And would love to go back and eventually update this Wolfsbane. But for now, she's actually still sitting over on my New Mutants display. So definitely need another Wolfsbane. I don't think we have enough. Next up was this image that I just couldn't stop looking at. I loved this Winter Guard team, and I wanted to basically complete, or not complete, but I wanted to add some characters because I already had Vanguard and I had the Crimson Dynamo, and they looked really lonely just sitting in the corner. So I had been searching almost for like a year, maybe longer, on eBay for some kind of a bear figure, something big, and I could not find it. Everything was like a bear on all fours or just like friendly looking bears, and I was like, I'm never gonna find this angry grizzly bear who's like standing on his hind legs. And then finally I found it on eBay, and I was just like, okay, now I've got to get this team going. So the first figure that I worked on was Vostok, who is like the android. He's kind of the Winter Guards version of Vision. But yeah, this one was pretty cool. This was like just kind of came together nicely. It was an extra Demogoblin body, and you can see I used the arms and legs from the Scorpion figure, painted silver, and then of course the cape from the Demogoblin, and that's an extra Iron Man head that's painted, and came out pretty good. Here's a picture of the bear that I found on eBay, and he's next to a random figure that I just picked up in a comic book store. I don't know what that is, if it's like a McFarlane or what it is, but when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I can totally make the Red Widow out of that. And I took the Spider-Man helmeted head and painted that a little bit of a dark red to kind of give her that look. And that's like the easiest thing ever. Those two characters, those two figures right there are just like, you know, basically done. Didn't have to do anything to them. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get this team going. So next up was needed to be Darkstar. I was like, okay, this should be pretty easy. Just a modified Enchantress head on a Hellcat body. That way I could take advantage of the already yellow parts, making the black and yellow a little bit easier to paint. And then I didn't even think about the ability to do this guy, but it sort of came together with a lot of random parts. I picked up an extra Punisher biker helmet, which I modified, adding in those extra horns. And then I basically forced that helmet onto a movie Thor, or I should call him Bro Thor head, which had that nice beard and the hair, which I painted white. Then you've got the body of Odin's son with his cape. The arms that were with the Build-A-Figure Odin and King Thor figure. The King Thor Odin belt, and then the lower legs are also on the Odin's son body. And I think it just overall really came together nicely and looks like the part for Perun. So very happy with the custom Perun. And here's the picture of the team together as I have them on display. And I know Hasbro's got the Build-A-Figure for the Ursa Major coming out, as well as the Darkstar figure. I don't know if I'll replace my Darkstar. I think I actually like the look of mine a little bit better. I have the sort of tracksuit stripes on mine, and Hasbro kind of a lazier paint job on theirs, and something about the way the star in the middle of the chest on Hasbro's looks is not, I don't know, it just doesn't look good to me. So I think I'll keep mine and maybe eventually replace my grizzly bear at some point. But I gotta tell you, I'm pretty happy with that grizzly bear. I picked him up on eBay for 20 bucks and he looks awesome. And the next up, I wanted to have a different look for Bishop. I've got two X-Men displays. One is like the classic X-Men, so I've got the old Bishop in with the classics. And then I've got like this newer, sort of darker, futuristic X-Men display. And so I wanted something different looking for Bishop, so I was very happy with this look and thought if I can find like a larger robotic arm, I can basically try to make this. And with some great help from a friend on Instagram, he actually made me the custom head sculpt, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get this going now. And I was really struggling with the arm. I didn't know what kind of arm I was going to use. I really wanted to find a large robot arm, but I wound up going with the old school. I think this was like the first Build-A-Figure Thanos figure. I took the arm from that and noticed that like it had some small details on it that sort of gave it a very cool look. So I just gave it like a nice dry brushing for silver to give it kind of like a worn robotic metal. And then I thought it'd be kind of cool on the other arm to kind of still have his classic red bandana, but just have it like wrapped around his arm. as if he doesn't really wear it on his neck anymore, but he still kept it all these years. I think this is just a Captain Britain body. It's just painted. It's not anything too hard to do. And gave him a little effect for his arm, and then I was able to glue a peg into his back so that he could have like a gun holder basically on the back. And there he is pictured with the older classic bishop. And for those of you that don't know, this dark new bishop is from the Messiah complex or Messiah War storyline. Bishop is actually like goes down like a dark path and almost becomes a bad guy. And he has his arm ripped off by this creature. And after his arm's ripped off, he like finds this robotic arm to replace his arm with. And it's kind of a cool little arc for the character. It didn't last very long, but it was nice to see them try to do something different with Bishop. After Bishop, I was looking at my classic X-Men display and noticed that there's only really a few old figures in there that need to be updated, but this was definitely one of them. The Toy Biz, I think it's Series 6 Cable. I was like, man, I love that figure, but I've got to give it an update. It needs an update so bad. So I took the modern Cable base and I decided that I was going to start with that. I'd seen other people do this and just sort of paint it blue and yellow, but I really wanted him to maintain that larger upper body look, and a lot of people thought that the arms were too small in this figure. The hands were like too big for the arms, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna change this and make it bigger. So I wound up using a Dormammu Build-A-Figure upper body, and on his right and left arm you've got the Build-A-Figure King Thor arms, which are much bigger. And of course the other arm gives him that robotic, or the other arm that I lost the words for what it actually is, but the virus that he has, or it's like a machine virus on his arm. And here he is painted with the blue and the yellows, and of course you have to have pouches. Gotta add all those extra pouches in, so I just cut up some extra pouches from belts and things and was able to kind of make them work on his belt and on the legs there. And you can see that like I used for the straps like extra belts with more pouches and stuff. And the reason for the larger Dormammu upper body was because of the way that shoulder piece fit into the whole scheme of things. Like it really sat in nicely on that Dormammu upper body, and I wanted to be able to reuse that with this figure. And so here you can see it really does look good. It's definitely a larger Cable, and I purchased an extra Mezco head online, and I like the way that looks. That definitely separates this Cable from the other two. You've got your sort of like 90s X-Force. You've got like that dark future Cable where the virus has even gone into his face, and this one is like somewhere in the middle where he's like got the X-Men colors and everything. It's pretty cool. Very happy with the way it all worked out. Just a picture of him with Deadpool and Domino. And then here's a picture of him in my display where you can see sort of like this is like the more classic X-Men look. And next up, I believe this was the last figure I finished right at the beginning of June. So this was a figure I really wanted to do, and I remember having this when I was a kid. And so a nice little throwback to the old KANE figure. I loved that comic series, that comic run for a while there, where he was showing up in Deadpool and Wolverine and fighting with those guys a lot. It would be cool if we got a figure like this from Hasbro, but I'm not sure that they think anybody still wants this guy. But this was my first time sculpting hair, and I was nervous, but I took a Punisher head, and I knew that he needed to have that kind of curly hair on top. And so yeah, it didn't come out too bad. And you can see here I took a Havoc body with the jacket and just sort of painted everything. A nice light gray for the body and the jacket. And then he's got like that silver band. I've seen it in some images it's silver, and some images it's actually pouches that are red, but I thought I'd done enough red on the figure, so I wanted the silver in there. I also sculpted those cuffs at the bottom of the legs and the collar around the neck. And then on his right hand, I'm not sure where I found that, but it was like a wrist guard of pouches as well. So I kind of just put that on the right hand. Now on the left hand, on his left hand, he's got like that blast effect that that old school toy had, and that was just kind of like my throwback to that old school toy. And there's a nice picture of him that reminds me of those comics I was reading where Wolverine kind of got in the middle or got in the way, so that Deadpool was trying to kill KANE. And here's a nice picture of him in with the rest of my X-Force display, which is getting pretty big and might even grow more. And that will do it for the first half of 2021, all of my custom figures. I did have some repaints and some bashes and some kit bashes that I did, but I might save those more like simple things for a different video. But hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you very much for watching.